Hi everybody, I'm assuming at this point that you have successfully installed R on your computer. And so this first video is going to walk through the first couple pages of Lab 1 where we introduce you to R, the overall environment, and that means basically the console window and then what scripts look like in R. So when you open up R, you're going to see something like this. You're going to have a window that has the R console and the banner at the top. And you have this input line. R is a command line program, and the console is your interface, essentially, with the R engine. And this first little exercise, just want to get you used to sending commands to the console and to get a sense of the underlying mechanism with R before we move into RStudio. So to start off, R is just simply something you can sort of program and tell it to do. It can be as simple as using R as a calculator. So here I'm typing the square root of 4 and hitting enter, and R spits back to me one line of output. That's the one in the brackets, and then there's the 2, obviously square root of 4. 2 raised to the power of 3, I get 8. And you can move with other things, and this is where you start getting some of the power of R, is that you can start to create variables and assign values to them. They can be scalars, they can be vectors. I could, for example, create a variable I call x, and use this little arrow, so it's the left pointing the less than sign there, followed by a hyphen. So it looks like an arrow, and you're going to assign something to x, and I can assign it some value. I'm going to assign the value of 2 to x, and you'll notice when I do that, that R does not give me any output, because I haven't asked for any output. I'm just giving a value to a new variable. If I then want to see x, and what that is, I can now just type in x, hit return, and R will spit back to me, oh, x, I know that has a value of 2. That's working with just a scalar quantity. You could also create vectors or lists of numbers. So let's say I had yield data for a couple of plots. So my variable is called yield, and then I use this function c in R. And you'll notice in R there's all these parentheses everywhere. That's the way R works. It's a function followed by parentheses, and inside the parentheses is going to be the argument of that function. The C function is a combine function, so it takes a list of things and combines it essentially into a vector. And you can put in a bunch of numbers here in parentheses and hit return. Again, R doesn't spit anything back to me, but it has now stored that vector into something that you called yield. So if you ask to look at yield, whoops, without typos, this is what you get. An output, and there's 4 numbers stored inside that particular variable. Other simple commands, ls is a command that asks R to list all the variables in its current working memory, and so those would be the variables from this particular work session. And when I hit it, it tells us that we've so far created a variable x and created a variable yield. Other things you can do, you can operate with vectors of equal length. Say, for example, I have a bunch of data I've taken on oil content that I've measured on 4 different plots. So I had 4 yields for a particular plot, and now I'm getting some maybe quality data, oil content data on those same plots. I can type all those numbers in, and I have stored it. Oh, what is it telling me? I forgot my C. I forgot my combine function. So R definitely spit out an error at me. That's the nice thing about red type. And now I can do things with it. I could now say, well, I want to know the oil yield, and the oil yield is going to be given by the yield of each plot multiplied by the oil content of each plot. And then if I ask to look at what the oil yield actually is, this is what I get. The first yield of 30 was multiplied by 0.25, and that gave me the 7.5. 55 times 0.2 gave me the 11, and so on. And so in this sense, R is working, I think, as you would expect. We'll be getting into more and more complicated functions, but I think the first thing that you should do if you've never worked with an R before is to open up the program and give it some commands in the console window. There's a lot more powerful commands, obviously, than just combining things and multiplying things together. For example, there's a correlation function, COR, and I could ask for the correlation between two continuous between a pair of continuous variables. So say yield and oil content, and I could ask for it, and it's going to show me that there's a very strong negative correlation between yield and oil content, and that's something that you would see in a lot of agronomic crops. There's also statistical tests that are very easy to access. You could do a correlation test of yield and oil content. It's one thing to say that it looks like the correlation is very high. It's another thing to actually run the statistical test for it. In this case, we get it. The correlation is the same. It finds a negative 0.97 correlation, but now we've set up 95% confidence intervals around that, and we see that there's an extremely small p-value. So this is a highly significant negative correlation between these two variables. So you get the idea. This is the console window in R. Now the thing you'll notice about the console window is that every time I type something and I send it to R, I really have no record of it anymore. I mean, on this particular work session, I have a record. I can scroll up the window and I can see all of the things that I've done. But this is not a very convenient way to do the analysis, in that if I open up, if I start a work session the next day, I'm starting from scratch again, or it's not very easy for me to send all the analysis that I've done to someone else. So what you would do in reality is that you would actually do all of this analysis within our scripts. And if you go up under File, you can start a new document, hit New Document, and you'll see a new window pop up. It's just a blank window, and it's kind of like a word processor in that you can type in commands here. So I can type in the same command, square root 4. This is the very first command I typed into the console window. When I type it here and hit return, nothing happens. The only thing it does is it gives me the next line to keep typing on. So what the script is, it becomes a record of commands that I give R, but by putting them into the script, they don't actually get processed by R. If I want to have R calculate the square root of 4, what I could do is highlight the line, and on a Mac I would hit Command Enter. I'm going to do that right now. If I hit Command Enter, see what happens down in the console is that the line from the script was sent to the console and it was processed. Actually, it's sufficient just to have your cursor on the line that you're interested in. Here I'm doing Command Return again, and it sends it to the console. So now this is really nice, because now I can create a bunch of commands that are part of my analysis, and now I can save this document. I can go up to File, I can save, and I can give it a name and put it somewhere. And then tomorrow, if I want to open up this particular analysis and start again, I have all of my commands right there. I can send this script to someone else and ask for their input on it, etc. So this is there's a book by Beckerman and Pecci, Getting Started with R, and the way they describe scripts is very nice. They call them, they're permanent, repeatable, annotated, shareable, cross-platform archives of your analysis. And so scripts are really where you're going to be doing all your work. If I want to have the square root of 4, now I have 2 raised to 3. If I wanted to send both of these to the console, I could just highlight everything I'm interested in, hit Command Return, and you see both things get sent to the console. On a PC, I believe it's Control R is the key combination that will do the same thing. So what I'd like you to do now is you should start up a script, type in some commands, save the script, and become familiar with sending entire scripts or portions of scripts to the R console for processing. And once you're comfortable doing that, come on back, and then we'll talk about migrating over to RStudio.